All right. Hello, everybody. I will wave at the camera. How you doing? Doing another YouTube stream tonight for a couple of reasons. First of all, because, well, I like streaming, trying to center myself in front of the camera here. And second of all, because the XSplit stream that I did this afternoon, where I showed off all the stuff that I picked up from Retro Games Plus today, the audio is really, really bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play some Karate Champ for a little while, and then a bit later on, I'm going to show off what I picked up at Retro Games Plus today instead, using the PlayStation camera. For those who did watch the stream from earlier today, I did take it down. The audio is just so bad, and basically everyone who watched it told me that it was bad. So I really didn't want to leave it up there. It didn't make any sense to do that since it's poor quality. So I figured I would just do it this way instead. But before I do that, before I show off the piles of stuff, I do want to spend some time with Karate Champ here. Again, you can see the date here on the screen, made in 1984 by Data East. So this game is now 31 years old, if you can believe that. And I have done streaming with Karate Champ before. I don't know if I did it with YouTube Gaming. I don't think so. I think I did it on Twitch. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure I did it on Twitch, actually. So this will be a first here. Keep in mind that unlike Twitch, when I ran streams on Twitch, YouTube Gaming, the application here, doesn't show me any information as far as who is watching, how many people are watching. The only information I get are comments that you send me. And I guess there's about a minute delay or so. So when you ask a question, it may take a little bit for me to get around to it, but when I do, rest assured I will answer it. So as for Karate Champ, a little bit of background for those that didn't watch the Twitch stream. My experience with Karate Champ is a lot like my experience with MagMax was when I did that stream earlier in the weekend. Karate Champ was one of those games that was in the small town of Greenfield, Massachusetts that I lived in for my high school years from 1986 to about 1990 or so. Karate Champ was located in a local teen center, which is where junior high and high school students got to go on Friday or Saturday night, depending on your grade, in order to kind of like school dances, but in a much more controlled environment. There were also arcade games there. There was a snack bar there so you could get refreshments. It was just a really cool place to hang out. That was the place that in 1986 I actually met my first girlfriend, whose name was Michelle, and I had my very awkward first kiss back in 1986 as well. So, history aside, let's go ahead and begin playing Karate Champ here. Before I do that, there's one thing I want to do. Hey, look at that! I actually show a subscriber here. Give me just one second. I am coming right back. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started here. I need to center myself. There we go. Push on only one player. Okay, well, let's go ahead and do that here in just a second. I had a person watching and then they left. I don't blame them, because just as I had someone tune in, I had to leave the room for a minute and grab my phone. Okay, with that done, let's begin. So I talked a little bit on the Twitch stream about how this is the Japanese version of the game and is different than the American version. Nope. Oh. There we go, right in the face. Ha! Take that. Kicked him right in the jimmy. And there we go. Yeah, that was good. Oh. Here's a win. Now, in the US version of the game, none of this stuff at the dojo or at a tournament really happens. This is more reminiscent of Karate Kid, let's say. And apparently there are a lot of people that want to watch this tournament. Aw. Aww. I can't believe that didn't hit him. Again. You'd think I learned my lesson the first time, but apparently I don't. I'm trying to do the same move, and I'm getting out-thought here. Alright, next point wins. Oh. Wow, and he got me with the full point at the end. Look at the red eyes. Sad karate fighter is sad. Wow, I didn't even get onto the high scoreboard. Alright, let's try this again here. So the US version of the game doesn't show him going into the dojo that I remember, although there is a training sequence like you'll see here, which is a way to get some quick points. Okay, I guess that's it. That's a good way to start. Without a doubt, this is one of those games when you played it in the arcade that you wanted to have a Walkman with you. There we go. Because there's no music really that goes on, so the sound effects get old pretty quickly. On to the tournament we go. Wow. I'm making the same mistake that I did last game. Alright, let's just win this event and move on. I just got a flower pot in the nuts. That's always good. Gotta stop going for that move. I don't learn. There it is. Yeah, they just got run over by a bull. That was good. I meant to do something. I actually did something on the controller, and nothing happened. There we go. Oh. Kicked him in the back. Yeah, the big face. This is pretty much all this game is, by the way. If you're expecting something different, it's not going to happen. The only different things you'll see are different bonus stages, like the flying objects and the breaking of objects, like the cement or panes of glass. But that's pretty much it. This is another one of those games, much like Mag Max was when I played that earlier in the weekend. That's more of an endurance test, and more I want to get the high score, so I need to stay focused kind of thing. That bull will beat me every time. Oh, now I know how to jump up in the air. That's good. Ah. Trying to get too cute. Howdy, Captain. Ow. One thing that Data East certainly got right was the look of pain on the faces of the fighters when you get kicked in the gut. Ah, like that. It looks like you just got hit either in the gut or the groin. Well, there you go. I'm glad I can help you out through a chore period. What we'll do here, before I start playing again, I will do what I promised I was going to do, and that is show off the stuff that I got from Retro Games Plus today. It's going to be a very small picture, so I'll try to do the best I can to show things off so you can see them. The first thing is right here, and of course it's in reverse, but actually I'm not going to do this, but Magical Tetris Challenge is what this is. I forget that this camera shows everything in reverse, so that really makes no sense to show. But that's Magical Tetris Challenge for the N64. I guess I'll have to just do a YouTube video on this, shoot it with the iPad at some point. So I guess that plan fell to crap. So I guess I'll just go right back to playing then. Whoop, not going to play two players, just one. Did not think that plan through, which is fine. Oops. Nope. Oh, I actually pulled it off that time. All right. So, oh, man, I just took that one right in the jaw. So how did I find out about this game, really? As I mentioned, played this up in Greenfield, Massachusetts. I also did see it in arcades before then, but I never really played it in arcades because I didn't know how it worked, and I really didn't want to waste quarters on a game that I really wasn't that familiar with. Oh, that's that for you. That's cool. Whoop, there we go. And two. Nope. I have my N64. I actually had it given to me as a gift a couple of years ago. It still runs well. N64s are like tanks. You really have to abuse it for it not to work. And that's fantastic. I like that about a lot of the cartridge-based systems. I think the only cartridge-based system that really gives problems is the Toaster NES. 1, 2, 3, 4. That was bad. I mean, I have a side-loading NES, and it works probably about 70% of the time. And that's just, I mean, a combination of age and design. It doesn't work as well as the top-loading NES does, but spending $100 on one of those just isn't in the cards right now. Ow. But yeah, N64 really is a console that I don't collect a lot for, and I probably should rectify that. But I think the reason for that is just a lot of the same games I've been getting the PlayStation versions. So the N64 exclusives like your Turok the Dinosaur Hunter and other games, I kind of go with those on a catch-as-catch-can basis if the games aren't that expensive. One thing I do want to get at some point, and I know where I'm going to get it from, is I will suck it up and I will get Superman 64 at some point in the not too distant future. The game store, the game store locally that I go to has like multiple copies of it, and it's $10 there. I can probably get it for a little bit less, but it's just been a matter of not finding anything else when I go in for a visit. Usually I find other things, and then I'm kind of out of funds before I get to Superman. So Superman 64 is on my list. Yeah, the problem with new consoles is that there are a bunch more moving parts, and it doesn't take much for one of them to poop the bed. You know, my PlayStation 2, for example, reads about 85% of my games. There's about 15%, maybe a little bit less than that, that it doesn't want to read for whatever reason. And part of that is just because I've put so much use into the PS2, this particular PS2 that I have, since I got it. I got it in the summer of 2011. Whoops. I got it in the summer of 2011, and I've put dozens, probably hundreds of hours in on it. And while that's great, it is a system with a DVD drive in it. It has to spin discs, and it gets tired. Ow. So I know at some point, probably next year, I'm going to have to start hunting down another PS2 to replace this one. I probably should start paying attention here because I'm almost dead. Nope, I lost. So, N64, I think I have 20... Actually, I can tell you how many games I have for it. Because I have an application on my phone that I track all of the games for each of the systems that I own. Collection. Actually, I have 36 games for it, so I have more than I thought. And it'll be 37 when I put Magical Tetris Challenge in. But that and the GameCube are probably the two systems that I have the least games for. As a matter of fact, that's true. Every other console that I have games for, the NES, the Genesis, the Super Nintendo, the PlayStation, PS2, those I have the games. I have over 100 games for. It's the GameCube and the N64 that I have less than 100 for. GameCube, I think I've got. Let's see, I can actually tell you. GameCube, I have. Where's collection? I have 29 games for the GameCube right now. And I know I need to work on getting more of those. I actually don't have an excuse for the GameCube. I really should get more games for that. I think the big thing with GameCube collecting is there are certain games that I want to get. Again, they're exclusives, and I don't really want to pay out the ass for them. Super Mario Sunshine, for example, although people pick on that game, that's a game that I do want to pick up if I can find a pretty good deal on it. Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg is another game that I want to pick up at some point. What else? I suppose Luigi's Mansion is something I probably should pick up. It's actually a game I've never played, so I'd like to give that a shot. And there are some other things too. I did see when I went to Retro Games Plus today, I saw 2 copies of of Bloody Roar for the GameCube that I really wanted to get, and I just couldn't. I couldn't convince myself to sink $20 into it. How am I streaming this? I am streaming this through the PS4, and Karate Champ is what's on the screen. I'm just not playing it at the moment. I'm just shooting the breeze. I was shooting the breeze with Boat Captain here. But yeah, that's where the stream is coming from. Since my stream earlier this afternoon crapped the bed, and didn't work out so well. Yeah, in terms of being able to collect a lot of games, I haven't really had the money up until recently because I started working again after not working for 3 years. And the only reason that I've been able to add so many games over the last couple of weeks is because I squirreled away as much money as possible to go to Retro World Expo, and I didn't wind up spending as much money as I thought. Plus, I sold a couple of games, and I sold my Orphan NES manuals. So I made not a ton of money, but I made enough that I was able to sink back into other games that I wanted to buy. Well, that's awfully nice of you, Captain. I really appreciate that. To be honest, I haven't seen any copies of Luigi's Mansion out in the wild here in Western Massachusetts in a long time. So that would be really cool. I've never played it. I remember when the GameCube launched in 2001, how big a deal people made of it because Luigi was getting his own game. But that's not one of the games that I got. When I got my GameCube at launch in 2001, it was Rogue Squadron, Rogue Leader. I got that. That was the game that I wanted the GameCube for. Super Monkey Ball and what was the other one? Wave Race Blue Storm. Because when I got the GameCube, because I didn't pre-order it, what you had to do, and possibly Play Choice 3 will remember, if you didn't pre-order, you had to buy consoles that came with certain games. You had to buy a bundle. You couldn't just buy the GameCube straight up because there were so few. And retailers knew how to spin that. So if you wanted a GameCube, you had to buy one with a certain preset bundle to it. And the one that I got had had Rogue Leader, Super Monkey Ball, and Wave Race Blue Storm as part of that set. And the interesting thing, I'll get back to Karate Champ here in a second. The interesting thing about GameCube is I really took it for granted when I had it. What I'll do, Captain, is I will... that's a good point. I'll send you a message online, and I'll let you know where to get it. As I really would rather not, because my mailing address is my home address. I don't have a P.O. box because I really don't get a lot of things sent to me. I know getting a P.O. box at some point is something that a lot of streamers and retro folks do. But I really don't get many things sent to me. I really don't ask for or expect things. Basically because I just do this out of love. I don't do it for any other reason. It's just fun to do. But I will get in touch and I'll be able to share that with you. So yeah, this is great. Let me go ahead and get back into in the Karate Champ, though, so that you're not just staring at this push on only one player, which is a weird translation. Perhaps I'll get lucky and be able to beat my high score here before this stream ends. No, that's not the way. That's not even what I wanted to do. That's fine. All right. Oh! I'll take that. Yeah, I deserve that one. It'd be nice if there was a little bit of music that played in here so that it wasn't so quiet. Or if there was just a little bit of white noise that would kind of come up and down with the ebb and flow of the fight. But again, this is 1984. Not a lot of games had background music playing, so that's fine. Whoops. What console would I recommend for a collector on a tight budget? I can tell you honestly, there are a couple that I recommend. The first one, although I was just talking about my issues with the console, but PS2 right now is incredibly cheap, A, and B, there's still a ton of games out there that people are still trying to get rid of, either through thrift stores or through resellers or through Craigslist, eBay. I mean, there are just so many PS2 games out there that the games, most of them, not all, but most of them are relatively inexpensive. Unfortunately, the best time, at least in my opinion, the best time to get PS2 games is kind of past. And the reason for that is because GameStop was just 75% off. They were selling them until they ran out. So I was able to get some really solid titles for really cheap prices. So PS2 is one that I would recommend. Another one that I would recommend, believe it or not, right now would be the Wii. Wii prices, I think you're going to start to see come down starting this holiday or just after this holiday. And I don't have any, I don't have any authority to say so, but my gut tells me that GameStop is going to start to really get rid of those things after this holiday. So Wii right now is ridiculously cheap. To give you an idea, Link's Crossbow Training, which is basically a light gun game, 50 cents. Ghost Squad, which is a port of a Sega arcade game, is $1. Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles, which is another light gun game. I know there's a theme here, but bear with me. That's like $10, and that used to be like 50. You are going to have more expensive games like your Super Mario Galaxies. Whoops. Your Super Mario Galaxy 2s, your Zelda games. Those are going to be more expensive just because of the name. Just like any other Nintendo console, when you're paying for a Mario or a Zelda game, you're going to pay up the wazoo for those. But a lot of other games are come down significantly in budget, where you can really build a pretty solid Wii library for cheap once you get over the initial price of the console. But depending on where you look, you can get the console pretty cheap now too. So the Wii is another. And the last one that I would recommend that's cheap right now, and I don't necessarily know whether it fits in the retro mold. I don't really think it does, but Xbox 360 games are getting stupid cheap right now too. Despite the problem with the hardware, despite the problems with the hardware, I mean, Xbox 360 games, I mean, I've been going hog wild on those because they're just so inexpensive compared to what they were. So those are the three that I would recommend. The original PlayStation is starting to come up in price a little bit, except for the usual suspects like sports games and really sports games. But that's one of my preferences, so I really don't mind it. But PlayStation isn't bad yet. Genesis games are kind of up and down depending on what genres you're looking for. But Super Nintendo and NES games, yeah, those are stupid expensive. And you have to be right place, right time. There we go. You have to be right place, right time to find an NES or SNES deal. GameCube is starting to go back up again as supply is starting to dwindle a little bit. What else? The original Xbox, too, believe it or not, original Xbox is not very expensive. Two problems with the original Xbox. One, I guess there's a hardware defect with some of them, where there are leaky capacitors or something that happens where the system stopped working. So you need to be proactive and get that fixed. And the other thing is just the system. The system is just so doggone huge. That it's not easy to collect for, just because you have to make room just for that system. I know that's a silly reason, but it's one of the reasons I don't have an Xbox right now, is because the thing is just so big, I have nowhere to put it. Where I have all my systems set up, I'm in my office right now. Retro Central, which is my bedroom, is across the hall, and I have multiple systems in there. I have like 6 or 7 platforms hooked up to one TV. And as it is, those have kind of leaked over from the entertainment center to where my PS2 is actually on top of one of my CD racks. So I've got no more room for consoles right now. My thought process is... that's not good. My thought process is that I want to get a Wii, but I want to get one of the Wiis that are backwards compatible with GameCube. That way, my GameCube that I have right now, I can put that into storage, and I can focus on collecting both for the Wii and for the GameCube at the same time. So that's my goal. That's what I'm hoping to do. I want to see what GameStop does for the holidays, what they're going to do for the Wii, if they're going to drop the price any on the consoles, and if they're going to do any game deals. Because if they do that for the holiday, that's when I think I'm going to spring for it and make the move. So those are my recommendations for cheaper consoles to collect for. Believe me when I say that the last almost 4 years have really been a struggle up until the last month or so. Let me see. I don't know why, but retro game collecting in Pennsylvania is very difficult. Part of that might be the James Roll factor, but whatever. The thrift stores have slim pickings, and flea markets. I'll let you finish that comment if it comes through. Come on. Sure. Ah, boo. Retro, when you're hunting for retro games, it can be tough. And I have my theories as to why it's difficult. And really, one of those theories is that why retro game collecting can be tough is because YouTube has really called attention to retro game collecting. And I'm certainly part of the problem there. But watching it on YouTube, finding some incredible deals while you're out and about, the thrill of the hunt for a lot of people has become enjoyable. So when that happens, you get a lot of people out looking for games same as yourself. And if you're not in the right place at the right time, you can't find good stuff. And the other problem is that because sellers know what they have now, where games that used to be pretty much throwaways, or people would basically put outside at a tag sale or garage sale, now they're selling online because they can get more money for them. Yeah. Flea markets, when there are resellers at flea markets, I tend to steer clear of those. Pat the NES Punk usually does the same thing in his Flea Market Madness videos as well. Something that I talked about in the last... that's not good. Something I talked about in the last consolation episode was seeing if there's a smaller video game store within reasonable driving distance from where you live. Game Depot, the place that I go to close to home, it's about 10 minutes away from here, maybe 15 depending on traffic. I've been going there since 2012. And as I've been going there through the years, and I've been recommending the store to my friends and family and other people in the area, because they're just so gosh darn cool, they've given me deals on games too. They let me know when new stuff comes in. Prices that are marked, they take a little bit off for me. And I also try not to buy just one game when I go in there either. When I go in there and I'm looking to shop, I usually drop either I drop a fair amount of money, or I bring some trades with me so that it's worthwhile and it's not just one game. But it's tough, because if you don't have an independent game store in your area that you can do that with, you kind of have to catch as catch can, and that can certainly be frustrating. I'm just lucky here where I live that I have Game Depot close by. I have another place called Video Game Castle, which is also close by. I have Retro Games Plus, which is about 45 minutes away, which is where I've been going recently. So I've got those places within very close proximity to home, so I can pick a different place to go to almost and rotate it around every 3 weeks or so. Not all places are like that. You're gonna, depending on where you live, you may have a lot of smaller independent stores that have closed up shop or have been taken down by GameStop's dominance or whatever the situation is. So if you're not in my situation, you don't have places, then you kind of have to take your chances. One of these days I'm going to get that bull. You have to take your chances, unfortunately, and sometimes you might wind up paying a bit more, or in worst case scenario, you might have to look into possibly ordering stuff online. Oh, wow. This is the part where the computer kicks my ass, by the way. Wow. Oh, that's it. I'm dead. I almost got my high score up there, though. 39,000, I'll take that. Oh, that was, yeah, this must be the round when the computer just says, all right, yeah, I'm done messing with you. I'm just gonna beat you into submission. And I'll do that just so that we don't have the music playing in the background. So yeah, it's tough. It's definitely tough, and it gets tougher because retro collecting has just become so popular. But I've been what I've done lately over the last couple of weeks. If you think about it, I went to Retro World Expo 2 weekends ago, and then before Retro World Expo, I went to Game Depot and I got a few things. And then I've been to Retro Games Plus the last couple of weeks. I'm done going there for a little while, though, because I've pretty much cleaned them out of all the cheap games that I'm really interested in. Interesting thing about Retro Games Plus, though, is I went down there today with one objective in mind. The last time I had been there, which was a week ago today, there were copies of the second and third games in the Spyro the Dragon trilogy, and I was going to get them. I didn't get them last time. I left them because they were $15 a piece. So I was going to get them this time, but they were gone. So that's a cautionary tale. If you see something in a video game store and you really want it, make sure you get it before someone steals it from you. What was my first video game console? My first video game console was a Telstar Pong unit. And that was from 1976. My dad brought it home, and I played it with my dad. I was 4 years old, and my mom actually made a note in my baby/growing up book that I beat my dad at Pong, and that was pretty much how I knew that video games and I were kind of going to be attached at the hip, because video games had just been a part of my life for so long. So that was my first video game console, even though it was really just one game. My mom's mom had an Atari 2600, and we lived with her after my mom and dad split up for a little while. So I got to play the 2600. I also got to play an Apple IIc. So I got to play games like Zork and Dave's Midnight Madness. So there was a pinball game that was available for that. I played that. Never owned a 2600 though of my own, and I still haven't owned one to this day. And I don't own one primarily because I don't have a TV that can run it. If you get one, you have the switch box that has the forks, and then you have to buy an RF splitter. And I just don't. I guess I'm just lazy. I don't want to deal with that. So I never had a 2600. I did have a ColecoVision, or my mom got one that lasted 4 months, and then it died. My mom got it used, bought it from somebody, and we had it for 4 months. I played the hell out of war games on it. We had war games, Donkey Kong, and a couple of other games, and I just played war games every night because I love the film. And then my brother or my sister played it. I think it was my brother who had played it and said it wasn't working, and we never could figure out how to get it to work, so that was it for the ColecoVision. I really didn't have consoles of my own until 1990. When I was in high school, I was a Commodore computer guy. My dad's mom, my paternal grandmother, who I loved very much, and lost her in 1996 to breast cancer. But she got me those Commodore computers for school, thinking that I was going to use them for educational purposes, and that never happened. I used them for games, and because Commodore 64 computers the games were so easily copied, friends of mine, knowing that I was poor, would just copy their games and give me the discs. And I had my Commodore 64 for 4 years, from 1986 until 1990. And that Commodore 64 computer went through a lot. I forget what game it was that I was playing. I think I talked about this in either a consolation video or a retro unscripted video. But there was a game that I played, and I got angry enough where I slammed the keyboard and my spacebar popped off and shot up in the air. And so anytime I had to type from that point on, I just hit the little contact rather than the spacebar. Yeah, those were the days when I was a kid and I didn't value what I owned, and I had a little bit of a frustrating streak. It took until 1992 in Street Fighter II for the SNES when I snapped the controller in half because I couldn't beat Bison, and I had to replace that controller, which was expensive, that I realized that, hey, if I'm going to get angry at a game, then I need to deal with that frustration a different way. So I'll punch myself in the leg, or I'll just shout a litany of expletives, and that'll be that. But yeah, my first video game console that was mine, that was the NES that I got for Christmas in 1990. The first one that I bought with my own money was the SNES a year later, and the first console that I bought at launch was the PlayStation in 1995. So that is a very long-winded answer to a relatively simple question about what my first video game console was. A lot of memories of the Atari 2600, though. Because we were staying with my mom's mom for a while, and the 2600 was there. I got to play it only at certain times of the day. My time with the 2600 was very limited. But when my grandmother and grandfather were away, because I was just getting to the age where I could start to be left alone when everyone else went out to the grocery store or whatever. So when the house was empty, that's when I would jump on the 2600 and play for an hour or two. Or if my grandmother and grandfather were gone and my aunt was there watching me, she would let me play whenever I wanted. So, Missile Command, I played that. I flipped the game over. I was really good at Missile Command back then. I'm not nearly as good now. Playing Missile Command, the Atari 2600 version on Game Room for the Xbox 360, I think I can get to about 60,000 points or so. I can't flip it over like I used to. Asteroids is a game that I can play to death, though. That I can play for hours and hours on end. Laser Blast, Pitfall, Demon Attack, Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I hated because that game, there was no high score. It was just playing to beat it, so it really didn't feel like a challenge after you beat it for the first time. E.T., which and I've talked about this in comments on AVGN's videos and with a couple of other people. I don't think E.T. is a bad game. I think it would have been better if it had some more time in the oven, but it was certainly playable for someone like myself back then. I didn't have that much of a problem with pits, and I could beat the game pretty regularly. So I remember playing E.T. Friend of mine had the Activision Decathlon, and I used to kick ass at that game. The first time I ever stayed up all night as a kid, I slept over at a friend's house, and he had an Atari 2600 in his room, and I just played that all night long. After everyone else had fallen asleep, I was still playing games like Taz and Enduro and stuff after everyone had fallen asleep. When I was that age, because I didn't have a console at home, friends who had video game systems, that's where I got a lot of my exposure. Staying at their houses, visiting, that's one way I got to play games. And the other way was just going to arcades whenever I was able to get there, whether it was on foot or whether it was during the weekends when my grandmother or my mom would bring me. That was my video game exposure for, from say 1979 until pretty much until 1990. The only difference was from 86 to 90 during my high school years. That's when I had arcade games within walking distance of my house at the convenience store up the road. And then there were arcade games, Karate Champ is one of them, that were at the teen center that I used to go to. So I did get more access to arcade games without having to walk as far when I was in high school. But even when I was in 6th, 7th grade, I lived probably about 2 miles, maybe 3 miles away from the mall. And what I would do is on Saturday, every Saturday, I would get up at 9 in the morning and I would get showered and dressed and I would put my Walkman on and I would walk to the mall. I would spend my week's allowance, which was like $3 or $4. I would get those in tokens. I would spend all afternoon at the mall, and I would leave at about 4 o'clock. I would get home for about 6 from walking home, and I would have dinner and then kind of chill out for the night. So that's what I would do, because arcades are just, for me, we're kind of like Superman's Fortress of Solitude. That's where you go when life is crappy, when you just want to get away from it all, want to get away from bullies in school, you want to get away from bad teachers, want to get away from your mom yelling at you all the time, or a younger brother and sister always begging for attention. Arcades they were my happy place. I could go there with my headphones on and just lose myself in whatever game or games it was that I was playing. And that was one of the great things about arcades, is that you didn't have cliques in arcades. You didn't have to. You didn't necessarily have social groups. You could go in there, and as long as you were skilled at whatever game you were playing, you got respected by other people who were there. People got to understand who you were based on your initials, and they wouldn't mess with you. They would try and play the game that you had a high score on and try and beat you, and if they couldn't, and they knew that you were in an arcade, they would shake your hand and would say, that's a hell of a job, dude. That's all it was for me in track and field. I used to love playing that game, and I had high scores on the track and field machine at the local mall that stood for 4 years, and everyone knew who I was. So arcades, to me, were definitely a place that I always wanted to spend time, that I always wanted to hang out at. And this went on even well into my adulthood. 1996, 1997, when I was in a pretty significant relationship, and there were times when the relationship would not be happy. We would fight a little bit, and so I would go to a local arcade just to kind of get away from it all and tune that stuff out. And now arcades these days, at least locally, there's just not very much. They do have an arcade at the mall that I used to hang out at, and I still go to that mall on occasion. But that arcade is a bunch of redemption machines, like Cyclone, and it's like the timing games that'll pay you tickets. Not the usual arcade game suspects that you're used to seeing, or that I'm used to seeing from the 80s and 90s. So I get that arcades aren't what they used to be, but that's why I enjoy taking time if I get to go up to Fun Spot in New Hampshire, for example, which is what arcades were, although it's a bit more brightly lit than arcades were in the 80s and 90s. They do that, of course, to make sure that people don't trip over games and such, because they don't want people filing suit for any kind of injuries. But yeah, arcades, big part of my life, and that's why I run streams like this, games like Mag Max and Karate Champ and Gradius, and there are other games that I want to get down the road that I used to play when I was younger, just to be able to play them again. And it's really cool that the PS4 has them available, since we don't have compilation discs from Namco or from Warner Brothers. Let's see. I never got to go to the arcade. My parents were very strict and thought it was a waste of time. That does happen. One of the things that I had to deal with a lot until I was an adult, and until my mom and I came to an understanding. My mom was not a fan of my video game habit, like, at all. She thought that it was a waste. It was a waste of time. It was a waste of money. I wasn't, there were better things that I could be doing with my time, and she didn't like me hanging out there. She didn't like me throwing my money away. Just opening a Pepsi here and hoping that I don't spill it like I did earlier. There we go. She never got me video games for Christmas, even though I always asked. That was always on my dad's mom, my paternal grandmother, the one who really came through for me a lot when I was a kid. She used to get me games, but everyone else just thought they were a waste. So I had to fight that for years. And that's why I always had such a small allowance, too, as a kid, is because my mom knew where it was going to go. I wasn't using it on candy. I wasn't saving it to buy stuff that I wanted. Every week I was getting a certain amount of money, and that money was going into the token machine, and those tokens were going into arcade games. And she knew it, and she didn't approve of it, so she limited it the best that she could, without telling me unequivocally that I wasn't allowed to go to an arcade, because she was never going to win that fight, and she knew it. But I'm glad to report that when I turned 40 in 2012, one of the birthday presents that I got, and it was from a friend of mine, an online friend of mine, sent me an NES. And my mom, for my birthday that year, actually took me to a local flea market, and she actually bought me NES games. That was the first time that she had bought me any kind of video game ever. And it meant the absolute world to me that she did that. And it's been tradition since. Every year for my birthday, we go out game hunting, and she'll buy me a few games and add them to I add them to my library. So I'm very fortunate that my mom and I see things on a much more even wavelength now. and we're not at odds like we were. I can certainly understand why parents don't like it. Why parents don't like games or didn't like arcades back then. I just saw today, or yesterday now, because I think it's after midnight Eastern. Oh, it's almost midnight Eastern. I was in Retro Games Plus, and there was a dad that was just openly questioning his kid. Why are you wasting all your money on this stuff? So, I mean, that kind of attitude still exists, as unfortunate as that is. And I just think that that's not the right way to go about it. You have to let the child pick. You have to let the kid pick once they're old enough. You gotta go. All right, no problem, Captain. I know I've been yapping here for almost an hour, and I actually have to open the store in the morning, so I'm going to be headed to bed shortly. Good to talk to you. Have a great night, and I'll catch up with you online soon. Thank you very much for hanging out in the stream. I really do appreciate it. I do wonder, though, this ought to be fun. Not to be vain or anything, but I want to see what the stream is like for myself. You too. No, I guess I can't. I thought I had... No, I guess I didn't download it. Oh, wait. Yeah, I did. Hang on a minute. If there's even anyone still left in here. Oh well, I can't seem to find it. I was just curious as to whether anyone else was still hanging out. I see there's one person watching, but yeah. I know my voice is kind of shot because I did a stream earlier today and unfortunately it didn't work out very well. So I did this to try and make up for the crappy stream from this afternoon. But what I wanted to do, I couldn't do. I was going to show off what I bought at the game store today, but because the PlayStation 4 camera shows images in reverse, like if I show you Magical Tetris Challenge here, it's all backwards. So you're not really seeing unless you're able to read everything backwards. You're not able to see what I got very well. So what I'll do is maybe Thursday of this week, because I'm working at the store the next couple of days. But maybe Thursday of this week, I will post a list of everything that I got, so that you can see it. For those that are left, just to let you know, I don't know if I'm going to stream it, but I am picking up Dragon Quest Heroes tomorrow. I don't tend to buy very many games at launch, but any of the Warriors / Heroes / Muso games, I tend to buy those without thinking twice. So I'm really looking forward to trying that. I am a little worried because this game is more tactical than a lot of the other Dynasty Warriors games are, where you can pretty much go yourself and not worry about other officers flanking you. And you can really just make hay. But with this particular game, I'm understanding there are some tower defense elements, and there's a bit more tactical gameplay that I'm used to. So I'm hoping that I'm still going to like it. The reviews have been not overwhelmingly positive, like, oh, this is the best game ever, but certainly more positive than I would have thought. So I'm picking that up tomorrow. But I'm opening at the store tomorrow, and then I'm closing at the store on a Wednesday night. So my stream time or my social media time is going to be kind of weird the next couple of days. Working at the store is definitely taking a lot more out of me than I thought it would. It's just really difficult. By the time I get home or on my days off, because I don't have a lot of time to play games otherwise, my days off are gaming time when they used to be writing time. I just don't do a lot of writing as much. The only thing I'm doing regularly is just shooting a video a week. And even that gets tough because I have to try and come up with more topics. I certainly don't want to overdo topics because that tends to get people upset. So I've got to think about that. But the videos aren't difficult other than getting the lighting right, having to shoot at the right time of the day so that I don't have a bunch of the artificial lighting in my room reflecting off of the TV. So videos aren't the problem. Writing is certainly a problem that I'm trying to adjust to. It's definitely frustrating because I do miss writing. I just don't have the time anymore, which is kind of tough. But so Dragon Quest Heroes this week. Check me out on Twitter, and I will post some impressions of the game, what I think of the game, whether I'm going to keep it, whether I was an idiot for spending $60. I will post all that stuff on social media over the next few days. And then this week's consolation video will be shot and uploaded on Thursday because that is my other day off this week. So I will do that. And then there won't be any more pickups videos, I think, for a little while. I've gone absolutely hog wild crazy over the last 2 weeks. I have spent an absolute ton of money, and I have more games now in my retro library than I know what to do with. I'm trying to find homes for all of them, especially the PS2 stuff. I think with today's games, that puts me close to 770, which I am just running out of room to put away. And it's a pleasant problem to have. I'm certainly not complaining. I'm just trying to go over in my head where I'm going to put everything. And the PlayStation games today, with those, I got to be close now. Well, actually, I'm not even going to guess. I'm just going to look at the number. Let's see. So I should be close to 340 with those. So between PlayStation and PS2, I have over 1,000 titles alone. And then NES is another 200. SNES and Genesis are another 110 or so each. Then GameCube and N64 between 20 and 30 each. Sega CD is another 10. So yeah, I have a lot of games that I have to catalog. And thankfully, I have the ability to do that thanks to PureGaming.org's collection apps. Certainly nice to have these. But I got to go ahead and update those. And at some point as a project, if I get some time off, I want to update my VGCollect.com, my actual online account, so that people can see everything that I've got in my library. That's just going to take a little bit. But yeah, I think at this point I have played enough Karate Champ, and again, I got to be up in 7 hours, so I think I'm going to close this stream down, but it has been fun. I know it's been kind of a Trojan horse. I only played a little bit of Karate Champ, and I did a whole bunch of talking. I hope you don't mind. And we will do this again soon. I don't know when exactly, possibly later on this week. It's just tough because the time that I usually do streaming is the time when the entire house is sleeping. So, yeah. I just happen to be lucky today where everybody is gone. So I've been able to stream late and talk as loud as I want. But now, as you can see, my voice is starting to go. So thanks everyone for watching the stream. I know I've been long-winded. I will now go and tuck myself in for the night. And again, check me out on Twitter for more on Dragon Quest Heroes and other stuff. And until the next time, everybody, take care. Have a great rest of your night.